welcome to those joining us from, I guess, primarily UK, Europe on this call. And I noticed some Australian clients with us as well. So welcome from wherever you're dialing in from. We can tell when we put on a webinar, just based on the level of interest and registrations, whether or not we're hitting a sore point, if you will, in the MSP landscape. And generally, whenever it's around Microsoft in particular, being that it generally accounts for between 60 and 80% of all the costs that are incurred on a recurring basis within an MSP. So we're bringing together Cloud Olive and Enforcer, who I think tell a really neat story, but most importantly, I think from myself, Adam, one of the co-founders of Cloud Olive, and Jake, is that the two companies, the depth of understanding and knowledge around Microsoft as a whole, the impacts to MSPs. I think, Jake, you guys are now working with 1,200 plus partners across the globe now, dealing with some huge and solving some real complexities. They're bringing these two companies together to tell the stories and the patterns that we've seen within our own partner base. Hopefully over the course of this next hour, you'll just be able to take away a few thought exercises into your MSP and hopefully improve it. So my name's Adam. I'm, as I mentioned, I'm one of the co-founders of a company called Cloud Olive. Prior to starting Cloud Olive, the origin of the problem was I worked at Auditask for a decade, and we had hundreds of MSPs over the course of that time. Just ask myself, hey, how do all the other MSPs you work with solve license fluctuations across all the variety of different vendors and timings of invoices and layouts and all the rest? And we just never had an answer. So we set out 6 years ago to try and solve that very, very broad, turned out to be very difficult challenge. And now I guess you can think of us as we almost watch the watchmen. So however you're updating the PS-Safe accounts, APIs through your disties or anything else, Cloud Olive gives a really, really simple way to validate those things. And I'll pass it over to yourself, Jake, to perhaps provide a little bit of context to yourself as well.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, look, guys, lovely to meet everyone. Nice to see some familiar names there as well. But yeah, Jake Webber-Cadby, I head up the sales operation here at Enforcer. Been with our organization for just over 2 years now. Prior to my time here, I worked at ConnectWise, and more every time I was speaking to our partner base at ConnectWise, I was hearing MSPs wanting to A, do more with Microsoft, but B, share the same frustrations that it just wasn't easy to work with their technology. And that got me on to hearing about what Enforcer were doing, the problem that they were solving for partners. And ultimately, I've been here since, seen the company go from 50 partners to close to 1,300 now. So yeah, it's been a great journey. And I suppose a fun fact is my dad actually ran an MSP for 25 years. So hopefully I can resonate with some of your guys' headaches as well.
No, that's great. So in terms of the agenda today, we've broken it down into 3 distinct pillars. And I would note, if there's any questions, like we say it at the end, right? But if there's any questions or thoughts that come up during the webinar, just pop them in the chat. We'll look to either address them then, or we'll certainly find some time at the end. But the 3 areas: margins, management, and maturity. So Microsoft is a like a beast, right? Everyone can agree to that. But the key part is it actually touches every aspect of the MSP itself. So with Cloud Olive, we're very much working with admin, finance teams, operations, to ensure that billing is accurate. And then from a technical engineering perspective, I suppose Enforcer's going to be, certainly from the implementation side of things, going to be handled from that division. But Enforcer and Cloud Olive as an overarching reporting platform, really for everyone within the MSP. And especially around the owners and the founders and CFOs, et cetera, of an MSP. Collectively, the unique insights that both tools can provide sort of do travel through the entire MSP. So very, very briefly, we work now with north of 200 different vendors on a monthly basis. And our pure and simple promise to our partners is you get us data, we'll be able to compare that very quickly back to your PSA for billing, and let you know where there's any form of billing risk. Okay, and depending on how you're updating accounts now, manual, you've built something, or you're relying on APIs. APIs, and we'll work through a couple of examples, etc. You'll likely know them from your own experience as well, but APIs are not really 100% reliant. And the invoice itself, especially when it comes from your distributor, especially when it comes from Microsoft, especially when there's price increases coming all the time, which we've got something for you at the end of this webinar about. Invoice is super crucial each month to validate accurate source data to make sure that you're actually tracking everything accurately. And for those who are less familiar with Enforcer, Jake, do you want to just run through what we've got here?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, Enforcer is ultimately a software platform built purposefully for MSPs. MSPs are the only industry we support, and ultimately, what Enforcer does at its very core is solve the multi-tenant challenge of managing Microsoft security technology. So anything from helping you deliver Microsoft Intune across all your customers, and helping maintain a level of standardization across every single client environment without having to go into every portal one by one and spend hours configuring settings or policies or adding new users to 365 environments. So almost see us as that management orchestration layer across all of your Microsoft environments. We also have obviously developed the platform thick and fast over the past few months, and we're actually now going into threat detection and response. So in one platform, we'll be able to help an MSP not only secure and govern and build the foundations of security across every environment, but then for anything that does slip through the cracks, because you're ultimately never fully secure, we'll also have the detection and response capabilities in our platform to help mitigate some of those cybersecurity threats as well. So an example of that is, someone trying to log into an account from Russia. Our platform would flag that, go and block that, and make sure nothing's coming through.
Perfect. And I'd love to ask a few questions around the new release and that you've got coming up very, very soon. But pillar one here, margins, okay? Microsoft, as it says here, it's such an integral part for pretty much every single MSP that we work with. Many rely on it in some way, shape, or form for anything relating to user-based billing. Like, it's so crucial. Generally, onboarding, offboarding is pretty good, okay, when it comes to Microsoft, but it's super costly when it's not. And as you grow, getting in place the right structures, standardizations, today, like, there is a formula to it, and we'll hopefully actually share a lot of the underpinnings of this, where we see really well-run, operationally mature MSPs in what they're doing and doing a little bit different. It's not rocket science, but it's about seeing it, learning it, and implementing it. So the engine itself, okay, so at the top, you've got the various different services, and of course, AI Copilot being like on everybody's mind in some capacity for what it's worth. Everyone's using it, of course. And then down the bottom is the stuff that can go wrong, right? The things that can creep in that make it difficult. We've been taking vendor invoices now for 6.5 years and recognizing where there's inaccuracies to the PSA. A lot of those, the vendors or distributors are pushing things via an API. We have learned so deeply the errors and the what can creep in and how it can be really hidden when an API misbehaves, technical or human-led or whatever it is. If it's not marrying up perfectly and you're relying on an API, it's a recipe to cause challenges for yourself or customers in time. Invoice timing as well. If you invoice prior to your main Microsoft invoice landing, there's just pros and cons to it. We'll actually share with you a timeline of events, MSP A versus MSP B, and some of the pros and cons. NCE, so New Commerce Experience, launched 5 and a bit years ago. When it was launching, it was as Cloudolly was sort of taking off, and we actually bought, because we were like, that is so difficult what's getting talked about. They were like, we're going to buy the domain nceasy.com. And you know what? At some point in time, we'll build something that made sense against that and solve this problem. We're just going off in that direction, and we'll share exactly what the outcomes of that were. Prorating, I'll save that for the next couple of slides as we go through and just set the scene a little bit more, right? So if you're buying, just want to paint the picture of why it's so crucial to guarantee accuracy and confidence when you're on billing Microsoft in particular. Most amount of changes, generally the lowest amount of margin out the gate, 16 to 20% generally. So one of the challenges, right, if you're buying monthly but accidentally sell it as an annual commit, there's the names are the same of the services, the counts are accurate, you're buying 10, you're selling 10, whatever it is, that can go unseen for a very, very, very long time because everything looks good on the surface, right? But what's happening is you're subtly leaking revenue or margin, certainly, because the 20% cost difference in this, right? So this is a very subtle thing that can go wrong. Naming conventions go a long way to help solve this. And we actually share a formula around naming conventions for your PSA, which I deem to be probably the most important decision you can make in the PSA setup. On a more major one, so that's a subtle error that can cost over a long period of time. Your customers won't mind. Your customers will not come to you about that one, okay? Where the other one that I'm sure everyone can also relate to it, have some story on, is you're buying something you just don't on bill it for some reason. Contracts expired in the PSA, someone switched it off by mistake, whatever. Something's gone wrong there where you're buying something, you're not selling it. The impact, that the numbers you want to think about there is if you miss 1 month of Microsoft billing, it erodes 6 months of margin. So if you miss 2 months, it's wiped out a year. It's a 6x multiple with an error when it comes to Microsoft. And that's the number you just want to think about. That's why it's so important to just get it right. The other side is, like, customers, again, won't come to you for that one, right? But where they will come to you is if you're billing them and you've been billing them for a month when they cancel something and it's still been on bill to them, right? If they come back to you, you have to give them that refund. Your mistake, you have to give them that refund. It's the same thing. It's 6 months of margin that's disappeared. So imagine if that was running for a year, which we've seen one that, I shouldn't laugh, but we've seen one that ran on for over 9 years. And the MSP eventually found it, right? But if the customer finds it after a year and you have to pay it back, which you likely will, it's just a big hit when it comes to the margin that you're now no longer making on something that's already a little bit tricky to manage. So the first stage here is maintaining. You've worked hard to grow a cost base with a distributor of your choice. You partner with them, and hopefully you've negotiated a really good margin with them. If you're unsure if you're getting a good margin, email us. We see all of those things. We like all the different disties and vendors. Very quickly, if we spot it, we go, send this email, you'll get an extra $4,000 a month or something like that. We've done it a number of times before because it just seems off. And it can happen across many other vendors, but maintaining your margin, if you've worked hard for your 16, 17, 18, 19%, whatever it is, RRP change management, right? So Microsoft increasing the prices and knocking 5% off this or increasing this by 20%. In July, across many markets across Microsoft, there's an increase across sporadic licenses, it seems, between 5 and 33% coming up very, very, very soon. We have an offer. If that's something that's on your mind, we have an offer at the end of this webinar where we will actually do an audit, if you will, of the entire Microsoft, specifically highlighting where your RRP or MSRP, whatever you call it, is misaligned to what you're on selling through the service in your PSA, and just give you that information. And the assignment accuracy. So the RRP, it's crucial. If it's going to be in the invoice. And this is where APIs, again, will fail you if unless you're checking them constantly every single month. It's as manual as you can possibly get. It's not why APIs were really developed in the first place, of course. The source of truth must be the invoice on a monthly basis. Even the distributor can make a mistake. It will not show up in the APIs or in your PSA. It shows up in the invoice. Pure and simple. That's the amount of money that will leave your bank on a monthly basis. That's what we want to make sure it's accurate. Reverse reconciliation as well. So the example I gave where you build something for a period of time when it was actually cancelled, it's a hard report to get where you, like if you've got 100 lines in the vendor, but you've got 110 in the PSA, how do you know the floating 10 that you're potentially overbilling the customer on? And then last but not least is in like the naming convention. So this is one very simple example. Having a uniform approach to the way that you name Microsoft, like we strongly recommend having them broken apart, at least to have annual, monthly. There's probably about 20% of MSPs that will just have one SKU for business premium. It's just going to create challenges for the APIs to recognize what's what, or for your staff to be able to do anything with it. And then in terms of the metrics you want to be recognizing and comparing from the invoices, number one, the line item on the vendor, is it active and billing out in the PSA? Yes or no? Okay, obviously step one, pretty simple, but if you've got 500 lines, you need to see all of these things. Second one is, do the counts marry up? Of course. Are we buying and selling 10? Perfect. Next one in probably level of priority would be the RRP. Is the sell price married up to the current RRP if you sell at RRP? I think about 90% of MSPs do try to sell at RRP. If costs are increasing in the background and you're not picking them up, your 18% is gone to 13% at best overnight. Okay. And then last but not least is marrying up the costs. Like, are the unit costs accurate to what's in the vendor and what's in the PSA? They're the four metrics. If you've got 500 lines and those four metrics, there's 2,000 data points. If you're green on all of them, you're good. Move on to the next month. But it's a lot of digging in to try and understand and actually work out where there could be potential errors in that. So that for like we talk about the margin side more on maintaining, right? You've worked hard, let's get it right. I'll perhaps hand it over to yourself, Jake, in terms of I guess even just growing the margins that MSPs are achieving currently, and talk us through the specifics like around business premium in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess before that, Adam, just out of curiosity, what's the most amount of monthly recurring billing that you've uncovered that an MSP was missing out on before?
We had a very, like, it's nearly every single MSP has something that's found, right? But as you scale, the problem exponentially gets larger and larger. So we had a very large UK MSP that acquired a lot of MSPs over the time and had, I think it was £200,000 of annual recurring revenue that we found in Microsoft alone, but then a very similar number when it came to Kaseya for that same MSP. They had a combination of like 8 different Microsoft portals and stuff that we had to gel together and help them out. But it's a tricky problem, but it almost scales. There's a 3 to 5% error rate on your monthly recurring revenue, and it generally just scales in a linear fashion, that unfortunately. So if you're doing 100 grand a month of recurring revenue, we suspect there's probably 3 to 5 grand of cleanup initially, and that's 5 grand per month every month that you're going to get out of it. So yeah, 3 to 5% is pretty familiar to us, kind of what we expect.
Yeah, pretty substantial when that starts to compound. But yeah, what I was going to run through for the next few slides here is actually how can MSPs start to uncover additional revenue streams on top of Microsoft. So I'm firstly going to talk about consolidation on the tool stack and what that could potentially do to margins, as well as some new service offerings that you could potentially be offering to your customers or new customers as additional wraparound services. So firstly, let's take consolidating more on the Microsoft license itself. So I've been working with lots of MSPs over the past couple of years to really start going through, well, you're already paying for a business premium license. How much of that license are you actually leveraging? And it's unbelievable and quite shocking in some cases where they're paying for this premium license, but they're leveraging, let's say, 10 to 20% of the technology that's included. So what we've started to help our partners with is consolidating more on tools such as Microsoft Defender for Business. right? A best-in-class EDR solution that a few years ago, most MSPs wouldn't have even considered because back in the day, it was pretty rubbish. Now it's Magic Quadrant leading technology, and that gives MSPs the opportunity to reduce third-party tooling cost, lower their cost of goods sold, and consolidate more on the Microsoft ecosystem. Again, that flows through the entire stack. You know, you think about even as the basics around multi-factor authentication, email security. They've got Microsoft Purview now to help with some of your data governance. All of these components can now be, all of these services can now be delivered through a license that many of you are already paying for. So I guess my cry out to you all is go back into your business and start thinking about, are we actually even getting the most out of the license, right? What Adam was talking about is, are you billing the correct amount for the licenses that you're paying for? Now go a layer deeper. It's like, are we then leveraging the licenses that we're paying for in the first place? So this is, you know, this can unlock huge amounts for MSPs. And again, this can scale up. You know, many of you are paying thousands a month on endpoint security as an example, and Microsoft has an incredible alternative to that now.
Good question. What's the most underused feature of Business Premium, would you say, that is getting taken up by a third party?
I would say it is the endpoint security, the Microsoft Defender suite. You know, so many businesses are paying for a Sophos or a SentinelOne or a CrowdStrike, all for good reasons, right? I'm not saying Microsoft is perfect and it's very hard to manage compared to some of these products, which I'll come on to in terms of how we can help. But yeah, I would say that is where you can unlock the most from a margin perspective when it comes to consolidating on what Microsoft have got there.
And if someone's doing a just a SentinelOne, pick a vendor, right? But they're buying for X and they're selling for two of X, and it's a line item currently out there on the invoice. Would you have your partners still just bill an EDR line, would you suggest? Or this works best if they're bundling things together and can the cost essentially just gradually get ripped out of the delivery of it?
Yeah, I guess this is where the nuances come, right? So the MSPs that have gone out, and we would always recommend, and we always recommended in my previous world at ConnectWise as well, is sell your managed service offering and don't put the line item to state what technology it is. It should be MSPA endpoint security, and that allows you to be agile as an organization, because if you put SentinelOne as a line item, in a year's time, you might decide that SentinelOne is not good enough, right? And now you've got the challenge of going and communicating that to your customers, and it just opens up a whole load of questions. So in answer to your question, it's much easier if it's been sold as just like endpoint security, because then you can retire whatever the third-party tool is in the background. You can have Defender run alongside that for a period of time, and then you can, you know, make that the primary one. Or what we've seen work quite well is MSPs will do a big campaign where they have gone and sold SentinelOne as a line item with some margin, and they'll go and educate their customer on the reasons for moving, purely more from a technology and a security standpoint.
Cool.
But yeah, I guess, look, it's all well and good me sat here saying use more of the Microsoft stack, but we know it's not easy. They don't make managing their technology easy in any way, shape, or form, right? You think about just managing Entra ID and then Intune and then SharePoint and Teams, and then the whole security suite around Purview and Defender across one environment is hard enough. Now, most MSPs that we work with are supporting around 70 different M365 environments. Doing that at scale becomes a huge challenge. So, you know, this is something that ultimately Enforcer helps you with. So we can help with that consolidation play, because you can use our technology to standardize across the board so that you can retire third-party tools without the labor burden of going into every single environment and configuring it manually. So I've talked a little bit there around how you can unlock additional margin through consolidation, I just wanted to give you a bit of inspiration around what we're seeing from a new service offering standpoint. Again, all wrapped around Microsoft technology. So AI is the hot topic. Many MSPs are scratching their head thinking, well, how do we actually productize this and how do we make money from this new world? So what we are working with our partners on is a phased approach to monetizing things like Copilot. And a lot of that comes from phase one, which is just start with the basics, which is all about having the foundations in place, which tends to be centered around security and data governance. Phase two is then making that policy real, and phase three is continually to enforce best practice and make sure you're remediating any of your customers that then fall away from that best practice. So the first thing that MSPs are monetizing in the Enforcer platform is our Copilot readiness assessment. So being able to run an assessment on a customer or a potential customer within minutes, to sit down with them, and you could charge this as a project, or you could provide this as a free of charge offering, a free risk assessment to get a foot in the door. But this is phase one, is educating your customer on, hey, it's great that you want to start leveraging AI in your organization, but here are all the security things that we need to consider before we even turn on things like Copilot. Now, what we're seeing is this is great for generating additional PS revenue, because off the back of this assessment and report, it's shining light on where the gaps are within your customers' environments, so that you can then go in and say, well, okay, across the next 3 months, here are the new technologies we're going to configure in your Microsoft environment to make sure you are then ready for AI, as an example. What we also do is not only allow you to unlock the PS revenue, but we've actually built some really simple things in our platform that allow you to deliver an ongoing recurring service. And one of those things is shadow AI detection. So let's say you've done the readiness piece, you've done the governance piece, you've got the environment ready. Well, now you can say to a customer, well, for X amount per month, we're going to report on shadow AI. So if you've got users within your organization that are using DeepSeek, or they're using all these third-party ungoverned AI platforms, we're going to alert you to that. We're going to work with you on educating your employees as to why that is not a good idea. Because obviously there's huge compliance risks in, let's say, a solicitor firm having their employees inputting data into DeepSeek. So we've actually got, it's almost like a security tool now that will flag that and alert the MSP to what's going on there. The other part of the ongoing recurring service is all around adoption and usage. So you've done a great job of getting the environment ready. You've now sold the Copilot license itself. Now what we provide you with is a mechanism to sit down with your client every single month and show them these are the teams in the organization that is using Copilot really well. Here's the applications where they're using it really well across Excel, across PowerPoint. And then on the other side, here are the teams that are using it really poorly, and you're getting no value for the license that you're paying for here. And again, it allows the MSP to then go in and do workshops and do educational content for their customers to make sure that they're really getting the most out of the license itself. And then tying that all back together is once you've flagged things that they shouldn't be using within their environment, you're then governing and putting in the best practices to prevent that from happening again. So in Enforcer, you can then leverage things like Defender or Purview to then put the right mechanisms in place to block things like that happening in the future. So that's just an example of how you can start adding additional recurring services, but also uncover additional PS revenue off of things like Microsoft Copilot, which is going to be a hot topic for a lot of your customers at the moment. And then on the kind of more simple side, again, if you don't feel like you're ready to go down the Copilot journey yet, and you're looking for additional revenue streams, A lot of our partners are taking things like our tenant configuration backup, and they're delivering that to all of their customers as a per tenant cost for a nominal fee. Again, it helps you cover the cost of Enforcer and make some additional margin on top of that. So we back up all of the policy configurations in the 365 environments across all of your customers every single day. And that is something that you can very easily sell on top of your normal 365 data backup as an example.
And I just got a point to add there as well. We have a number of joint partners now, and the funny thing I find is they'll go, "Hey Adam, we've got this new vendor. It's Enforce." I'm like, "Yeah, cool. Send us the data. We'll get it all linked up for you." And then there might be 3 tenants, 5 tenants, and then the next month it comes and there's like 80 that have all of a sudden just gone to town on. So clearly something happens where they're like, "All right, yeah, just put it out to all of our customers across Microsoft. We need this visibility." I guess the question one is that generally what happens, and is this what the partners would be roughly doing in the like in terms of the backup side of things? Is that generally what they're doing?
Yeah, I think this is your kind of like low lift. You just want to cover your hard cost of Enforcer. To be honest, most MSPs justify the cost of Enforcer just through the time they get back in their business because they're no longer spending hours going back into every environment. But we do see MSPs charge as much as £500 a month per
Yep.
customer to deliver this full kind of Microsoft 365 baseline as a service offering, which is obviously all underpinned by our technology and the way that you manage that across every single one of your environments. So yeah, although we're an operational efficiency and risk mitigation tool, there's absolutely ways in our platform that you can make additional revenue because ultimately that's what every MSP owner is thinking about right now.
Yeah, 100%. We've seen we're in a fortunate spot, right? We see costs from all vendors and all MSPs, and we also see revenue. We see the bookends, the accurate bookends, and we've seen plenty selling Enforce for £400, which is 90, whatever the percent margin is. It's significant compared to many of the others.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny whenever I see a new Enforcer partner reconcile with us, and then it's the next month. I'm like, you're going to get locked in, guys. Enjoy the ride.
Yeah, no, that's great because ultimately, look, I think every business at the moment, when you're taking on additional tooling, there is an element where you're like, right, how do we recoup some revenue back here?
Yep.
Because I think every MSP struggles with the fact they're paying for so many different technologies at the moment.
Yep. So the next piece is the management side of it. So I'll share some of the scenarios that we often run into, and I'm sure many MSPs here. You can certainly place yourself in terms of the way you choose to operate. So we've got a very common scenario where an MSP is really eager to get the invoices out on the first of the month. I'd say it's more heavily weighted towards ConnectWise users, I think, because they've got that auto bill feature on that day, and you're like, we just got to get it ready before then. And what that does is it creates a lot of stress in MSPs to pull down reports and figure things out, get things done, and then get the bills out on the first. And then depending on the payment terms that you have with your customers, if it's 2 weeks, great. If it's a month, like at the end of the day, we believe the right path here is to make sure that you have all of your revenue come in and all of your costs go out within the same month to make reporting really, really easy and stress-free when you're closing last month in the new month. It becomes a lot quicker and smoother because there's just a really good system and process to it. So if you bill on the first and the distributor such as Paxate invoices you on the sixth, you just there's just no opportunity at that point in time prior to you billing to get accurate source data. Like we talk about this a lot, but the invoice is the source data when it comes to all vendors. But really importantly, when you think about where's 80% of your costs sort of living and the moves, adds and changes, generally in that distributor invoice. And we just say Pax because they bill on that time. But if it's Ingram or Cinex or Geocom, or you pick the distributor or Microsoft Direct, whoever it is, the timing of that, and also important when they expect you to pay, like their own payment terms. Like what you really want to be able to do is do it accurately once, However that is, and we'll share a second scenario in a sec. Have your customers pay within that time. So just one example here, an alternate rhythm, right? So if the invoice is from the distributor, still comes on the 6th, like that's baked in. Kaseya comes on the 6th. Many others come at different times. Some's in arrears, some's in advance, some's current month. Like they're all over the show, right? But where is the lion's share of your cost being incurred? When does that arrive? And when do they expect you to pay? 2 dates just to mark on your own calendar here. And then when you invoice your customers, right? If you can wait for the invoice to actually bill out the clients, which would mean in this scenario not billing on the 1st, there's pros and cons to doing that. Okay, what we're talking about here is guaranteeing accuracy, reducing the amount of effort. Okay, because if you're relying on APIs, you need to check those APIs. You should really check those APIs on the 1st. Okay, but then when the 6th comes along, you really need to check the invoice just in case the APIs weren't behaving as well. So if you bill before the invoice arrives, you should be doing 2 checks per your biggest vendors. The smaller ones, maybe not so important, right? But this is where the errors can creep in. So we've got a scenario alternate rhythm 2 there where invoicing on, say, the 14th or even the 10th, just a few days after you've got the accurate data, with 2-week billing terms with your customers, allows you to then have the tail end of this month. This time here, we've got 28th, 29th, 30th, 31st. We've got those days to get any stragglers who haven't quite paid their bills from a customer's perspective. You close out the month, you move into the next month, and away you go. Okay. Another piece of this is like if you're in common scenario like scenario 1 or scenario 2, you can likely understand and feel those challenges and the timing issues, right? I think Cloud Olive really exists because the timings mismatch across many, many, many different things in this game, and APIs are not reliable. Okay, because of those 2 problems, it becomes incredibly complex. And one of those timing things is the decision the MSP makes to when you bill your customers. If you're doing managed services, I do think that they should go out on the 1st, because that's just a very simple assign count at a point in time across license types. It's not an invoice. You cannot get that data from an invoice. So it's an alternative report. Something Cloud Olive can also help you with getting that source data. And depending on your construct, we're happy to jump on a quick call and sort of review this with you. But everyone's figured out their own approach. The way you figured it out and the timings and who you buy from will have some problems. That's it. Like you're sort of forcing it, and you will always have these common challenges. One of the things that probably about 20% of the MSPs we work with either they're already doing it, and we go, hey, how do you bill your pro rates? And they go, well, we just bill the high point in the month. And about 80% do not. In our, like 75 to 80% do not. They really try to do the pro rates to the day. Like, I don't think there's a right or wrong to this. I think it's personal preference. But just to give you some of the numbers behind considering a high point, and maybe it's not for every customer, because some will drill you if there's anything that's off. So fine, don't do them. Do not do them, because it's going to give you a headache. But for others, right, the benefit of it is it simplifies down the entire management. You make slightly more margin as well. To the tune of, if you're making £1,000 worth of margin now, or €1,000 worth of margin now, by billing high point versus pro rate, that'll lift to about 1150. Okay, so run that into your own margin base now in Microsoft. Those are the rough ratios that you would be looking at if everything went to high point. And the management of it actually becomes a lot easier, especially because there's very little downgrades these days, right? When it comes to Microsoft, it's generally creeping up if there's certainly if you're on annual commits. And the other really key part is the choice you make in terms of your product IDs in ConnectWise or services within the Autotask PSA. The top right are legit 5 different business premium SKUs from 5 different distributors. And I don't know about you, but I think AI will understand this. I don't think humans are well built to understand this, and we need to deal with this. The other challenge is that, like, that top one's Pax 8, right? You don't know if it's an annual, monthly, or monthly. And what that then means is the knock-on effect to you have to customize that to some degree in your PSA to be able to delineate A versus B versus C. So our recommendation is don't use the codes, because they're very hard to follow. If a new staff member comes on, they ain't going to have a clue what's going on. Keep it really, really simple for humans to read, okay, for your teammates to read within your business. So much so that if you're confident that you could put that SKU or that product ID or service name on the invoice and your customer will understand it, you're probably in the right place. Okay, that's probably the level of detail you want to think about. And we got two examples down there: Microsoft Exchange for Plan 2, monthly, and then we've got a short form name of it. We've got a almost like a calculator or a calibrator that helps you build these types of things if you're interested. We'll also share, if you could potentially, Ali, there's a wider blog that we wrote some time ago, which still rings really true here. If you're not doing some form of convention that's down the bottom right and you're like, this thing is hard, there's a reason for it. This blog gives you a really deep level of detail of just some considerations you should think about. It's to me the most important decision you make in your PSA, and it really determines whether or not month end is easy or hard, or can you scale without having to re-engineer the PSA. So from a Microsoft visibility perspective, so Enforcer do an incredible job in multi-tenant, complete, deep depth around like managing all the configurations when it comes through. Where we spent our time was helping with NCE. Okay, so this is NC Easy that we rolled out a number of years ago now, and the main problem was twofold. One is all the different billing commits and frequencies. That to get that information at the moment, you often have to go into individual tenants to get that. So this just consolidates everything into one place. And the key part being able to see, I want to be able to filter on annual commits, sort by expiration date, what's on the horizon, and then the unassigned column, just being able to see, does this customer want to be renewed for the full 12 licenses when they've only got 11 people assigned to it? And this can come out as an export, right? And or can be leveraged as if you're doing user-based billing at all and you want the assigned level with some flexibility to go, or admin app we exclude. This is a good way that you can get the data in one place and then leverage that to bill on the first or whenever you're going to bill, right? So this module, as we coined it, was NC Easy. Really just trying to take some of the headache away from managing all the variability and the fluctuations that happen when it comes to Microsoft. Just a point in time BI report that can be leveraged in a number of different ways. And where this is key, right? So the Microsoft in particular, I think there are probably some vendors that you almost set and forget. I think one of the big reasons why Datto did so well over the years, because Jake and I actually worked at Datto with one another once upon a time as well, but the 3-year big device, put it in, just works, right? Microsoft, unfortunately, is not like that. So you build it out once, you work really hard. There's just moving parts that you need to manage. And the two platforms here in our experience will hopefully put you in a pretty good spot. But I'll maybe pass it over to yourself there, Jake, to talk through like the impact over time if we're not managing this stuff properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's all about, this part is all about how do you protect margins and keep them super high for the managed service contracts you've already sold, right? And what we've seen with, especially when it comes to Microsoft, is there's just a lot of manual work that happens behind the scenes that isn't necessarily accounted for. And there is an opportunity cost to every hour that one of your engineers spends diving into a Microsoft environment, configuring a new setting, onboarding a new client, and spending 8 hours sifting around the portal and configuring that. Again, a lot of these things just aren't actually accounted for, which means that you are hemorrhaging margin here. So I guess what I'll kind of walk through is how Enforcer can help there. And again, this just really hits on what we see across the board. When it comes to managing Microsoft, there are some key challenges and key themes that we see across MSPs. Firstly, there is a lot of support overhead, right? The complexity of Microsoft, the fact that it's not built for managed service providers, their technology is built for enterprise, just makes it hard to support in general. That means time. right? Time goes into it, wastage, risk exposure. It's a moving target. Microsoft is not a set and forget. They are constantly updating their technology. They're bringing out new policies to keep on top of new threats. That means MSPs should be continually managing those environments and adding the best practices. But quite candidly, they don't have the time to do so. So they don't do it, they neglect it. And then what happens is the risk exposure gets bigger and bigger over time. And what we see at Enforcer is it's only your newest customers that have your best level of security when it comes to Microsoft. Because customers you onboarded 2 years ago, you haven't got the time to put senior engineers into those environments and tweak the configurations and make sure all of the latest best practices are configured. Also, another piece that, not necessarily related to margin, but the repetitive, boring nature of a lot of this work is not really great for your engineers, right? Yes, there might be some that enjoy it, but many senior engineers and MSPs get bogged down with this work because it's normally your one Microsoft expert, or you've got a couple of folks internally who are the go-to people. It's normally them that get bogged down in the mundane rubbish. Now, relating it back to margin, those are resources that could have been working on a new project, which is revenue generating for your organization. So again, how does our technology actually help with that? Well, firstly, we normally see people sit somewhere along this scale where it's either very ad hoc, and that is every environment is bespoke. That eats away at profitability. There's no standardization there. You don't know how much time is going to be spent on each environment on a monthly or a quarterly basis. So you just have very unpredictable revenue and profitability when it comes to those Microsoft-related services. All the way up to our most mature partners, they have a governed environment. Every single one of their customers is standardized to the best possible way. Of course, there's always going to be certain client nuances, which is fine, but at least getting your clients up to 90% standardization helps so much from a predictability standpoint. And what does managed consistently actually mean? Well, it's tenant standardization at scale. And when I say tenant standardization, that is making sure that every single one of your environments has at least 90% of the configurations which are matching across the board. You've got structured processes to onboarding new clients, project work that you do, so that if someone is doing an Intune project in 2 weeks, that looks exactly the same as how it was delivered 2 weeks ago. Again, just tightens things, just makes things consistent across the board. And then what this ultimately does is reduces the operational overhead without losing control. So what Enforcer helps you do, again, this was what we were really founded to solve, is address that standardization piece at scale. So almost think about building your golden image, right? So you build a golden image of what best practice should look like across every environment. Enforcer then allows you to compare every single environment against that golden image and then align those customers to it in a really efficient and effective way, rather than having to go in manually and figure out where those gaps are on a tenant by tenant basis. The alignment piece is very structured, where in our platform, we will show you the unaccepted deviations. Those are configurations that are in your customer environment that are different to your golden baseline. So you can go through and decide, well, do we want to align that to the baseline, or do we actually want to accept that because that is a known, that's a known difference that this particular customer has to have. And again, this then gives you visibility across the board as to what are the known differences to our baseline versus everything that is aligned across the board, and you can provide reporting on that as well. The key piece as well, which a lot of MSPs we speak to struggle with, is how to report on the value that they're providing, especially when it comes to Microsoft-related services, right? I don't think they have particularly MSP-friendly reports in their portals. you're sifting around an Intune portal, then you're going into Entra and you're compiling some level of report to take back to a customer. Well, what we allow you to do is schedule monthly reports to your customers to show, okay, this is how aligned you are to our baseline. Here are the gaps. Here are some of the things that we're going to work on over the next 3 months to plug away at some of those gaps. So again, all about aiding you and having better conversations with your customers. It makes them feel like, they're getting value for the money they're paying you. And it also helps you retain those customers because you're not opening up the doors for other MSPs to come in and start poking holes in the level of Microsoft security that you've got in place there. And what happens when this is set up and working well in Enforcer? Well, we firstly see a much lower cost to serve, right? The time allocation that is needed to go in and standardize is much less if you're using a multi-tenanted tool. Obviously, if you're trying to do this without a tool, there are going to be hours spent going in tenant by tenant to do this work. You've got predictable delivery. Again, you think about onboarding a new engineer into your business. If you've got your tenant standardized in one portal, they can come in, they can see, oh, okay, this is how we deliver our services. So everything moving forwards becomes predictable. Because another challenge we see is most engineers in MSPs have a different definition of what good looks like. So if you have a governed golden image and baseline, well, that is just managed across the board and there's no exceptions to that. So now, that adds a whole new layer of simplicity when it comes to building out your technical team as well. Reduce risk. This is huge, right? Without tools like Enforcer, how can you possibly update 100 365 environments every month, which is what you should be doing, right? Microsoft last year alone added, 50 updates to Intune. How could you go in and apply those updates across the board? So Enforcer allows you to reduce risk by continually hardening those environments, because all of a sudden now you have a scalable way to roll out new security policies across 100 customers in 5 minutes. And ultimately, this leads to you being able to scale your organization without needing to hire more engineers every time, right? We see big project backlogs when it comes to Microsoft related work because of the hours consumed in it. Enforcer allows you to deliver more with the same people that you already have, right? So an example there is we helped a London-based MSP work on 17 Intune deployments last December, right? The previous maximum they could do in a given month was 5. And that added an incredible amount of revenue to their organization because they had a packaged way of delivering that Intune project, and they used Enforcer to roll that out without having an engineer go in and do that policy by policy. So I think the key thing here that we've touched on a lot is protecting margins, making sure you're billing correctly, making sure you're building a scalable Microsoft practice without having to consume hours and hours of engineering time. And all of this feeds into adding maturity to your business. So I know Adam's got a few points here that he's going to touch on in terms of maturity as a whole.
Yeah, I'll speed through them because I do want to get to the offer around the RRP sort of check that everyone's got. Most will think about in the next couple of weeks, right, when the new July invoices come down. But I just want to share a couple of like a journey of Centaurus, who are a long-standing partner now of Cloud Olive based in the US, and they've been on a journey. They're 20 plus years, multiple acquisitions along the way. So, and a 20 odd years running ConnectWise. So many admin hands in that system over a long arc of time, just created big complexities. They've now, I think they've now standardized on primarily Pax8 for their Microsoft. And what it's then like, the challenges that they had with those 4 key areas that we talked about earlier. A is everything we're buying actually active and getting built out. Did accounts match? Did a cost match? And lastly, is our sell price? Are we getting the margin that we were expecting? They have north of 1,000 plus lines each month. just on the Pax Bill unique lines, and it's a nightmare to manage. The other challenge that they had was that they've got some very long-standing customers that just pay their bills, right? So they're clearly doing a really good job on that front, but the reverse reconciliation, when we released that capability, which for about 6 months was the most requested feature within Cloudly, was I want to be able to see where we're maybe overbilling our customers. This gave them visibility across 400 odd customers very quickly. This is what they need to go back to their customers having conversation on. But so if you want to read that in a little bit more detail, you can jump on the QR code. And then Jake, you can talk through this incredible win for you guys I assume in the UK.
Yeah, so Infinity Group, one of our long-standing partners, they're one of the leading Microsoft-focused MSPs in the UK. They were delivering a managed security offering on top of Microsoft Business Premium, which was ultimately consuming a ton of their senior engineering resource. So what we did for them is, firstly, we cut their deployment time of their baseline from 15 hours to 5 minutes. They then did quarterly ongoing security hardening, where 2 of their senior cloud architects would go into every single one of their customers and apply new best practices. We cut that down from 80 hours to 4 hours on a quarterly basis. And we also helped them remove £600,000 of Sophos EDR spend by giving them a mechanism to consolidate more on the Microsoft Defender for endpoint technology. So yeah, really, really nice win. Hopefully this just brings some tangible numbers to everything that I've been speaking about today.
Perfect. And with 4 minutes to run, right? If you are facing price increases with Microsoft in the next couple of billing runs, but just save this link right in this QR code. We're more than happy. What this would mean was you link up your PSA to CloudOlive and you give us your vendor, your Microsoft invoice. We marry up every single line and then just explain to you where in those 4 key attributes you've got anything that's misaligned. You go ahead and fix whatever you need to fix when it comes to that. For partners on this call, of course, this is all included. You've got this capability already. If that's something you're concerned about coming up, book in with us. Let's make sure that you're getting that right in the first month. Because I've talked about one mistake in Microsoft, there's a 6x multiple, unfortunately, that you can't get back once it's gone. And what this would mean and look like is so this here, very simply, right? This is the current sell price. This is the RRP. If it's off, you can see it before you commit. So we want to present this back to you. You decide what you want to do with that information, very simply. And Azure, we haven't really touched on this too much, but we do have a webinar coming up. If you're scaling Azure or if it's hard, many MSPs find this like, what's the best practice around this? We've got a webinar that the team's going to be running around this very, very soon. Might be worthwhile having a look. Also on the website as well.
Awesome stuff. And then, yeah, I guess I've seen some existing partners on board. So this may be not that applicable to you, but for anyone who hasn't seen Enforcer in anger yet, feel free to book a demonstration with us. One of my team or myself will run you through the platform, talk you through the specific use cases for yourselves. And then what I've also done is put a link in the chat here to our new tool that we've just launched, Enforcer TDR. We've got early access there. So if you sign up to early access, we will then be probably allowing people to get hands-on with that technology through July and August time. And we'll have something GA ready for September. But if something's resonated around the standardization, helping you with the compliance across all of your Microsoft environments, then feel free to book a demo of our core platform today. That core platform also includes all of the Copilot, shadow AI detection, and Copilot management pieces that I mentioned as well. But yeah, thank you all so much for your time today.
Yeah, we sort of run out there. Are there any instant questions that we should get to with 9 seconds to run? But anyway, we'll maybe wrap it up there. But appreciate everybody taking the time, and yeah, get in touch if anything resonated with what Jake was referring to, or we were talking about over at Cloud Olive. Love the opportunity to speak and work with you when the time is right. But have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone.
Cheers, everyone.
Cool. Thanks, mate.